Don't you hate it when you just want to fight your opponent, but then they unleash an obstacle course minigame that you have to circumvent just to get close? I'm G5 Cosmos for Game 5 Smash, and although most players don't like dealing with projectiles, knowing a few useful tips can make them much less oppressive. So for starters, you'll need to understand all of the options you have to avoid getting hit by the projectile. You can shield, jump, spot dodge, roll, parry, use a reflector, or attack the projectile. Against projectiles with no hit stun, you can even run right through them. Shielding is the easiest and least committal, but stops your movement completely and depletes your shield. Jumping allows you to move forward, but puts you in the air where you have to land. Spot dodging is more or less the same as shielding, but more precise. Rolling is a way to move forward while staying on the ground, but might leave you vulnerable. Parrying is a more effective and more precise form of shielding that doesn't stop your movement for as long. Reflectors are very useful, but sometimes aren't fast enough and may have cooldown, and for some projectiles, a quick attack like your jab will clank or beat the projectile. Any of these options is fine to use, but you'll want to mix them up and consider that your opponent should be studying which tactics you choose. So you've successfully avoided a projectile using one of those methods. What's next? Well, this step is where most players who struggle against projectiles get it wrong. See, most of the time, avoiding a projectile won't actually give you time to punish it unless you're already really close to your opponent. But so many players make the mistake of trying to hit the opponent as soon as they get around one projectile, and the opponent is able to act here and can retreat, throw another projectile, or do anything else they'd like. Okay, so if you can't punish a projectile after you avoid it, what good does it do you to avoid it, and how can you hit your opponent? Well, as you're avoiding the projectiles, you want to focus on moving closer to your opponent. As I mentioned, a projectile at close range is very unlikely to be safe, so once you get close, your opponent is likely to stop throwing projectiles, and you can probably punish them if they do at this range. To move forward while avoiding projectiles, you can jump or roll, and walk or run in between stationary ground defense options. Keep in mind that you can't immediately shield after starting your dash, so walking can be useful here. As a side note, if you're watching this from the perspective of the projectile player, a good rule of thumb is to never throw your projectile if the opponent is close enough to short hop over it and land in your space. Anyway, once you've carefully avoided projectiles and closed the gap, there's a good chance the projectile player will retreat so they have more space to throw their projectiles at you. Sadly, this is another spot where many players make a mistake. Excited by finally getting close to the elusive opponent, they rush in with an option and then get snagged by the opponent's retreating action. This happens against campy playstyles in general, projectiles or not. The thing to remember is that your opponent has limited space to retreat to, so if you take your time and keep closing in without committing, your opponent will put themselves in the corner, letting you pressure them with positional advantage. You'll also want to beware of tricky opponents who mix up by rushing towards you after camping with projectiles for a while, so never let your guard down and keep reacting. If you'd like tips like this personalized for your needs, you can contact me for professional coaching to take your game to the next level. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to Game 5 Smash and click the notification bell so you never miss out on more tech and tips.